everybody. Come on. Good morning, good morning. Where is everybody? I'm never the first one here.
First is last, last is first. We're not keeping track, are we?
No.
All right.
No, we're not. It's Monday.
We've got a topic of conversation today, Nina, that I wasn't really aware of. Now I hear me. Are we just now getting up?
No.
I'm sorry, Brian. I apologize.
Hi.
We're going to say hello.
Welcome
again.
to Sunrise Extra on a Monday. You didn't see that whole false start, but we had a false
I think
start.
they got a sense that something wasn't normal.
I blame Director Brian.
Hey, we were talking about the environment this morning because of some new Pew research out that finds a big jump in Americans saying that the environment and climate change is now becoming one of their top priorities when they vote on things, politics, presidential politics, state politics. So I'm trying to get here. For the first time in this survey's 20-year history, a majority of Americans said dealing with climate change should be a top priority for the president and Congress. That's a 14% rise from 4 years ago. So now nearly 2/3 of Americans say protecting the environment is one of their leading political priorities, and that kind of affects how they vote. So today we have a cap and trade vote in the Ways and Means Committee down in Salem, and that's that emissions bill that would tax gas and other things from, you know, big semi-trucks and anything that's produces carbon and emissions.
That burns gas, basically.
Yeah, that cost for those companies would be passed on possibly to consumers. That could threaten a Republican walkout because if it were to pass the Ways and Means Committee and go to the Senate floor, that's when Republicans could possibly do another walkout.
For starters,
aside from that,
yeah.
we want to know on a scale of 1 to 10, 10 being the most, where does the environment fall for you in your political priorities?
I admire your ability to tackle such a heavy topic on a Monday morning. Honestly, I'm just trying to get back into the work week.
Swing of things? Yeah.
Wake up, aren't you?
I guess this is our work schedule, so we should probably be ready to tackle such a subject. But again, 10 would be the highest, 1 being the lowest. Where do people rank environment in terms of their...
Yeah, so to jumpstart your guys' thinking and let us know, we are watching your live comments. We've got Facebook up. I will have YouTube up.
Yes.
You can also text us. See at the number at your screen, 503-226-5111. Text us.
Who's monitoring the texts?
You are.
You are.
Do we have some
Not until I get this thing
I
logged on,
have
I'm
the
not.
stream.
Okay, so let's throw up some of the comments, producer Jess, on our tag board that we can show you. Gina says hers is a 10. That will never change. David says 0. It is extremely important, but to him, it's not a political issue.
That's interesting.
Take.
That's called the opposite end of the spectrum.
Marilee says it's very important. It's about even with health care for her. Thomas says it's around a 4, so kind of middle of the road for politics. Sean, pretty high considering we need clean air and water to actually survive on this planet. It's amazing how many people lose sight of that fact. Maria on Facebook, I'm reading some other ones that I just have pulled up. Oregon already does its part. We produce so little on a world scale that more regulations are not going to make any difference.
We don't have too many people living here on a world scale, which is why we don't produce a whole lot. That's
Right,
just
we're a very
factually
small,
true.
right, percentage.
Yeah.
And it was really interesting.
Yeah.
You can watch this on YouTube. Our new 6 p.m. show called The Story with Dan Haggerty. Our reporter, Pat Doris, really did a great explainer on Oregon's emissions. And it really is just boils it down to we produce like 0.01% compared to, you know, other populations our size.
Yeah.
So we really have almost,
Yeah.
I mean, it's 0%.
And not to get
effect.
political, but the logic following that statement would be it's not going to really matter much what we do or don't do
Right.
in the big scheme of things.
But I think and that's what a lot of, you know, folks on the conservative side, loggers, truckers, all of these people who are very worried about their jobs or worried about the cost of things going up, who say it is zero, you know, effect. The other side, a lot of younger people say, hey, this sends a message, you know, like let's change something
sure.
of
Yeah.
let's make things better. And yeah, we, in the grand scheme of things, it's
But that's an
zero
important
effect.
message too.
Right.
The people that I think a lot of Oregonians do voice that opinion. We want to be, even if our populist base is not going to have much of an impact, we can have an impact by being leaders in this issue.
So people on the stream are starting to weigh in. Good morning, Jay Stouffer. He says 10, the environment is very important. And then Stanford Walker says, I would say a 4. Stanford, tell me why. Get on there and start typing a little bit more about why you only give it a 4.
And I'm ready to no longer even mention Stanford's last name. I mean, the guy is here so often with us every day.
Stanford.
He's just Stanford.
It's just
point,
Stanford.
right?
I'm gonna call him Stan then.
He may not like
Stan the man chiming in.
We don't know if he likes Stan.
Nicole also chiming in on the Facebook stream, I can see. Nicole says, environment is definitely important. No argument there. She says, I don't see regular cars going away. And then she also comments, Nicole does, and good morning, by the way, Nicole.
Yeah.
She comments that every little bit helps. I miss our deeper recycling efforts. And that is a bit frustrating, right? In that we're going away from that end of things in terms of,
Right.
It used to be easier to recycle,
Yeah.
put it that way.
And then we learned that apparently we haven't developed the markets to handle our recycling goods, which
Right.
was really disappointing.
Right.
Yeah.
And a lot of the younger people who have been doing these rallies and stuff that we've seen on the steps of the Capitol here in Oregon and nationwide are saying, recycling doesn't cut it anymore.
How many years would you say this has been an issue? Saving, the phrase save the planet, has that been going on?
I remember when
10
I was a
years, 15
child.
years, 25? How long do you think it's been a big?
30 years? I don't know.
No, not 30.
Re-ask the
When I was
question.
a
I'm sorry. I got consumed
kid.
by this comment that I think you're about to read, but ask your question again.
Yes.
How many years do you think this has been a forefront, something we hear anyway? It's movements to save the planet, to stop climate change.
Since 2000. That's what our director Brian
since
says. No,
2000?
I remember 1985, and like
Yeah, you're thinking
Yeah.
of Al Gore. Yeah, that's what they're.
I'm
Well, that
thinking
could
since
be.
I was in
So,
elementary school.
I
Me
asked the
too.
question because to me what's really disappointing is, listen, this neighborhood doing something and that neighborhood doing something is not going to impact anything. The planet, different countries, have got to come together with some bold initiative that everybody gets on board with and goes with. I mean, this business about I can save the planet individually. No, you can't. It's troubling to me that there's really no organized, that I'm aware of,
Right.
no organized, sensible plan to really attack globally what is a global issue. And until we get there, it's just a bunch of people running around with T-shirts saying, "I'm great because I throw my can in the recycle bin."
Right.
No, I get what you're saying,
And
but
it's disappointing.
but
We've got to get there. This other stuff
countries
is a
are
bunch of
made up
nonsense.
of people. And things happen when people have a consciousness raising toward whatever their thing is.
Right.
So, sometimes top down is difficult. Sometimes bottom up percolates and gets something going, but it really is a different mindset.
And I think it will get there, but I'm just disappointed how long we're percolating, I guess is my point. We need to get past that percolation and get to this makes sense, and we're all as a collective world community going to do it.
But there are leaders that don't even believe it's a thing.
Well,
right. So
there's
how is
problems.
that going to ever coalesce? It's
I don't know.
interesting.
I want you to get to viewer Janet's comment in a moment,
Okay.
but just one thing to follow up on what Rod's point. I was just talking to my kids about this the other day. One movement that I think actually has worked, and it took individuals coming together, and it's made an impact, right? In the mid-'80s, when you asked me, like, when do I remember this being an
Well,
issue?
climate change became an issue in the mid-'80s.
Okay.
And that became a topic in the 80s.
And those are my earliest memories. I was like in first grade in 1981 or whatever. But I remember talking about the ozone layer. And everyone was saying, we are destroying the ozone layer. And this was the 80s. And what was one of the big culprits with that was the hairspray. And hey, we had to stop using the aerosol hairsprays. We're ruining the ozone layer. And people listened. And people stopped. And there has actually been improvements in that regard, right? With the ozone layer is better today than it was in 1985. And it's funny because I was getting that lesson as a first grader, like, we are destroying this, stop doing what you're doing. My kids are getting a lesson today that tells them it has been improved.
Totally conclusive if that's cyclical or if that was a direct impact of what we did. But yes, I would put that in the victory campaign. Certainly something we don't need to be putting in the air, and everybody kind of went, yeah, we're going to stop doing that.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah.
So now to Janet Kittleson. Good morning. She says, as with all important jobs, parenting or running a country, there needs to be a delicate balance between what is good for the current population, for this population in 20 years, and what's good for the next generations to come. Our founding fathers recognized this when they wrote the Constitution. If we focus too much on the future, the past, or the present, we all will suffer.
If we focus too much on the future, we suffer in the now. You know, you don't think about that too often. You always think like you can't think about the future too much. But even in our everyday lives, if you keep thinking about, I got a plan, you don't enjoy today.
Yeah. Brenda, did you listen to the Daily yet this morning?
I haven't done
So
that.
there's a great podcast, if you listen at all to podcasts, it's from the New York Times. It's called The Daily. They put it out at 3 a.m. Monday through Friday, so it's right when I'm putting on my makeup, and so I get it right as soon as it comes down. And this morning's was on the environment, and it was really interesting. It was about the world's largest asset manager, so this like wealth management firm called BlackRock. The CEO is named Larry Fink. And every January, he puts out a letter to corporate CEOs around the world that's very highly anticipated. And so the New York Times tries to get the letter ahead of time. And this year's letter was all about climate change and the environment, urging all CEOs to really kind of make a change in the way they do this. And the CEOs really listen to this guy because he is one of the biggest money investors in their companies.
Oh, wow. Okay.
He's one of the biggest shareholders of Amazon. And so this podcast talked about, it was very interesting, within 30 days of him sending out this letter, you started to see Delta Airlines, plane companies who are one of the biggest carbon emissions. I mean, just by flying a plane, they can't help it. They announced that they are going to go carbon neutral by, I can't remember, in a couple years. Now they're not flying less, they're not using fossil fuels and jet fuel, but they are going to invest in things like, tree plantings and other stuff to zero out what they put into the environment. Microsoft followed it up, saying they want to be carbon negative going back to 1975 when they first started, by like the year 2030 or something like that. And I mean, yes, they have, you think of like a computer maker, they have way less emissions than someone like Amazon, who actually has vans driving around. But Jeff Bezos just pledged $10 billion for the environment just recently. And so this guy has a huge effect on, I guess, all of these CEOs around the world. And so you're seeing this kind of pressure, from their colleagues to fix things.
They should.
But really, and then in that podcast, you guys got to listen to it. It's well done. China puts out more carbon than the US and all of Europe combined. So it's like, we can do, all this stuff. We can do cap and trade in Oregon. But if these other countries don't follow suit around the world. I mean, whenever you travel around the world, like we went to Thailand, the water is not safe in Mexico to drink. A lot of people drink bottled water. That stuff goes on the street. It goes, in the ocean, like they don't have recycling like we do.
And then politically, it's so interesting, I'm going to use that word again, to see who we will put pressure on and who we will not. And China is one because of the business relationships that we have, not just with the environment, but with the NBA. I mean, you look at all kinds of things that we're entangled with. It seems like, they don't want to step on too many toes out of Beijing.
Stanford Walker, you asked for more on his comment, and he did follow up, and it kind of speaks to what we're talking about right this moment. Do you want me to share that, Brenda?
Go ahead.
Of course I said, okay, there it is. I thought I lost it. He addresses you by name, Ms. Braxton.
Yes.
Because you asked for more. Stanford started off this conversation by saying he would rate environment as a 4 in terms of where he ranks it in terms of political decisions. 10 would be the most, 1 being not at all. He says it's a 4. He says, I travel around the world, does Stanford. I see other people that don't do enough. So when I see China, Mexico, India, some of the very countries you just mentioned, not doing their part, it is tough, says Stanford, to put it on our local backs.
Right.
So for him, politically, environment is just a 4. But as environmentally, with no politics, I would say it's an 8. I mean, it's important to him, but he's saying basically he doesn't think that it does enough here to warrant putting it that high in terms of his politics.
It's hard to disagree with his logic, actually.
So Nicole Pratt says, while Jeff Bezos is donating a great deal, it's not as charitable as it appears. It's business. He's totally going to claim that on his taxes. Yeah, I never thought that it was
whatever,
charitable.
like he's rich.
I don't know what that means.
I
Think
wonder if he's going. Does Mr. Bezos come out with a plan to make his transports, his
So
vans
they're-
electric, or what's the plan there? Is
Yes,
that right?
and in that podcast I listened to this
Yeah.
morning, they have a huge push to make all of their delivery vans electric,
Yeah.
and kind of cut out
Yeah.
stuff like that.
And of
we've
course,
heard,
electricity is not totally green
But they
in
want it
itself,
wind
but
and
it seems
solar
to be
power.
less than the carbon coming out of the exhaust pipe.
and he wants to support wind and solar renewable energy.
That happens a lot, where you hear someone making a donation and then someone else saying, oh, they're just going to write that off anyway.
Whatever,
And
it's
I'm thinking, it's still a
okay,
donation
you know?
of
Yeah,
that
it
amount.
is, yeah.
But I always think of the
Yeah.
Seinfeld episode where Kramer talks about making a write-off, and Jerry's like, you don't even know what a write-off is.
Write it off.
Well, people
Just write it off, Jerry.
And it's not like that's
right.
That just means you don't pay tax you don't pay a portion of tax on that income.
Right.
It's not like you're just writing off $10 billion and you get it all back. That's
Right.
not the way that works.
But you know what, still, even with the donations, the thing that gets me, and maybe I'm just punitive enough or petty or whatever.
I think you're all those things.
Yes,
I was
know,
thinking
but
the same thing, Drew.
I think the billionaires can, have their billions, whatever, they earned it. They work the system and to their
Yeah.
advantage. But if we have to pay taxes, just pay your whatever percentage
Right.
of taxes. When big corporations don't pay any taxes.
I know.
That doesn't sit well with me.
No.
I guess
It shouldn't.
job
No sense.
creator, I understand.
Still.
But it just doesn't seem right to me.
And we're not asking you to pay more. Pay your percent.
Just whatever I have to pay a certain percentage. I get in trouble if I don't.
And the more you make,
I want that loophole.
in this
Yeah.
world of ours, we're not in that stratosphere. In this world, the more you make, the more you pay, right? But at some point, you get to another level where I don't know how to get there, where it's at. I tried reaching for it, couldn't grab it.
Yeah.
You get to another
It's,
level where you're not paying again.
Once you own your own island, all of a sudden you don't have to pay much.
Right. Right.
Isn't that wild? All right, you guys, thank you so much. Keep commenting. We have the post up on our KGW Facebook page with dozens more comments being added.
Oh, that's it?
By the
That's the
second.
show? All right, fair enough. That's all. I was going to
That's
ask.
the show.
I was going to ask people to text us. Text us tomorrow, would you?
Text us tomorrow. Save your fingers.
Bye, guys. See ya.